Hello there, you're watching All 24 News World News Program. I'm your host Islam Said, and up next are tonight's top stories. Occupation stalls the 7th prisoner exchange as Hamas reaffirms readiness for phase 2, rejecting any foreign rule over Gaza. Also in our news, President Tebboune inaugurates Fuka 2, the second desalination plant in a week, calling it a landmark achievement and a source of national pride. Later on, the U.S. tables a UN ceasefire resolution on Ukraine, omitting territorial integrity as France and the UK advocate for Europe's role in peace talks. And the UN Security Council condemns Rwanda for supporting the M23 offensive, demanding an immediate troop withdrawal amid a deepening humanitarian crisis. This and more shortly. Welcome back to the details. Leading our news tonight, the Palestinian resistance has released 6 Zionist captives to the International Red Cross, marking the 7th exchange under the Gaza ceasefire agreement. The handover took place on Saturday with 2 occupation soldiers freed in Rafah, 3 in Nusayrat and 1 in Gaza City without fanfare. The latter, a conscript in the occupation forces, first entered Gaza a decade ago. The exchange was meticulously coordinated, unfolding amid a significant public presence. Meanwhile, the Zionist occupation was set to release over 600 Palestinian detainees on Saturday as part of the 7th exchange batch. Hamas received the list of those freed, which included 151 individuals serving life or long sentences, 445 detained during the Gaza assault, 23 children and 1 woman. This exchange follows the handover of 4 Zionist bodies last Thursday.
We are steadfast on this land, deeply rooted, God willing. We send a message to Trump and Netanyahu that we remain resilient on our land. To Netanyahu, who claims they have eliminated the resistance, look, here is a glimpse of the young men prisoned who have honored us. They are our youth, raising our heads high.
We are very proud of the Al-Qassam brigades and to the Israeli occupation, President Trump and every enemy. Listen, if you return, we will return.
On a related note, Hamas emphasized that the continuation of future exchange operations hinges on the occupation's adherence to the ceasefire terms and humanitarian protocols. The movement accused the occupation of stalling the full implementation 33 days after the first phase began. Reaffirming its stance, Hamas stated it is prepared for a comprehensive exchange provided the war ends and the occupation withdraws entirely from Gaza. It also underscored that Gaza's reconstruction must be guided by Palestinian national consensus, rejecting any external interference.
Ensuring the completion of upcoming exchange operations depends on the enemy's commitment to the remaining terms of the agreement and the implementation of humanitarian protocol. This situation in Gaza is catastrophic, requiring mediators to pressure the enemy to enforce the humanitarian protocol and provide our people with shelter and relief supplies. We reaffirm our readiness to complete a full exchange operation in one comprehensive package, based on a permanent cessation of war, the enemy's withdrawal, and the reconstruction of the Strip.
In a related development, Zionist occupation forces launched a crackdown on Saturday targeting the families of prisoners released in the 7th exchange batch. According to Hamas prisoner media office, troops raided the homes of freed detainees, issuing threats to their families and warning against any public celebrations. Turning to more developments in Palestine, the polio vaccination campaign has resumed in the Gaza Strip after being obstructed by the Zionist entity. According to the World Health Organization, the initiative aims to immunize over 500,000 children. For more on this, here's Salma Nasib.
At a healthcare facility in Gaza, Palestinian children received their polio vaccines on Saturday, February 22nd, as a vital immunization drive kicked off once again. The World Health Organization reports that the campaign aims to reach over 500,000 children in the enclave.
The campaign is 5 days long. For your safety and your children's safety, polio remains a dangerous disease. Unfortunately, since the 80s, we were among the countries that had almost eliminated polio, and Gaza was known as one of the few regions in the Middle East and Palestine that was almost free of polio. But with the war conditions and current circumstances, unfortunately, we recorded a case, which is a dangerous indicator.
Last year, World Health Organization led vaccination efforts to reach over 95% of the target population. Yet, the virus persists. 6 samples tested positive between December and January, underscoring the ongoing risk for the unvaccinated children.
We decided after we found the virus was still active in wastewater to prevent infection and disease outbreak. To conduct another polio vaccination campaign. The challenge this time was that people had moved during the ceasefire, relocating from crowded displacement areas in the south to the north as people returned.
For families, this vaccine is a lifeline. Holding his grandson, this Palestinian grandfather expresses relief after securing his child's immunization.
Of course, we are coming out of a war, and thank God we survived. For the protection of our children, we came for the polio vaccination, and thank God we are safe.
Though healthcare access has improved since the January 19 ceasefire, certain areas remain unreachable due to the ongoing violence. As a result, 7,000 children in Jabalia, Beit Lahia and Beit Hanun missed their vaccinations, leaving them vulnerable as the virus continues to circulate in a already fragile health system.
Shifting focus to the occupied West Bank, Zionist occupation forces fatally shot a 13-year-old Palestinian child on Friday in Al Khalil, targeting him in Jabal Jawahir, south of the city, according to the Palestinian news agency. Meanwhile, the death toll from the ongoing assault on Tulkarm has climbed to 12, including children. The occupation has laid siege to North Shams camp for 14 days, causing widespread devastation and displacing over 16,000 Palestinians. In the northern West Bank, Zionist forces have intensified their attacks on refugee camps, killing 61 Palestinians and forcing tens of thousands to flee, according to the Palestinian Health Ministry. The Palestinian news agency reports that Zionist occupation forces have forcibly displaced 3,000 families from Jenin camp, demolishing their homes and properties. Over 33 days of relentless aggression, 27 Palestinians have been killed, with dozens more injured and arrested. The assault has left a trail of devastation, reshaping the camp's landscape beyond recognition. For its part, the United Nations has expressed deep concern over the ongoing Zionist aggression in the occupied West Bank. Now in its second month, UN spokesperson Stefan Dujarric stated that the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs is closely monitoring the escalating situation, particularly in the north, as Zionist military operations continue unabated. Turning to domestic affairs, Algerian President Abdelmadjid Tebboune on Saturday inaugurated the Foucault-Toussi water desalination plant in Tipaza, a key milestone in the country's $2.4 billion national water strategy. The project is one of the 5 new stations set up in Ataraf, Boumerdaz, Bijaya, Tipaza, and Oran. Hailing the plant as a major achievement and a source of national pride, Tebboune underscored Algeria's steady strides toward emerging as a leading regional power.
كل من قاموا بهذا المشروع وكل من شاركوا في هذا الإنجاز الضخم، إنجاز الجزائر المنتصرة، بالأخص من عمال ومهندسين ومسيرين بصفة عامة. كما أشكر القطاعين، قطاع الطاقة وقطاع الري وسوناتراك بالطبع، يعني على هذا الإنجاز الضخم هذا. الحمد لله وين وصلنا. كما قلتها سابقا، في كل خطوة تخطوها الجزائر اليوم أنا نقترب شيئا فشيئا من ولوج إلى ساحة الدول الناشئة بفضل الرجال والنساء اللي قائمين برفع التحديات في كل قطاعات.
President Tebboune commended the cutting-edge technologies employed in the Fukatu desalination plant, emphasizing its capacity to secure drinking water for citizens while preserving agricultural land.
300,000 متر مكعب يوميا، يعني 300 مليون لتر يوميا بربح أراضي في البحر. ما فيش إلا التقنية نتاع التحلية، في كذلك تقنيات أخرى. ما دام المساحة كانت ضيقة وباش ما نمسش المساحات الفلاحية اضطروا باش يربحوا مساحات في البحر، وهذا يعني يشير إلى احترام أولا الأراضي الفلاحية، احترام الأراضي الخصبة، وفي نفس الوقت تلبية حاجيات المواطن.
President Tebboune reaffirmed that the completed desalination projects in Boumardès, Bijaya, Taraf, and Oran will ensure a stable supply of potable water for citizens. He also pledged to implement further solutions to address water needs in other regions.
الله لما نكمل هذه السلسلة نكون وصلنا إلى تلبية جزء كبير من حاجيات تاع المياه الصالحة للشرب، حاجيات المواطن. الحمد لله أن وفقنا الله أن وصلنا، بدينا منذ 3 سنوات في التفكير في تحلية مياه البحر، وهو حل صائب إن شاء الله. وبالنسبة للمناطق الأخرى كذلك نسيب لها حلول، حتى إن شاء الله ما يعرفش الجزائري ولا الجزائري ما يعرفوش العطش إن شاء الله.
Turning to Morocco now, Labor Union leader Miloudi Moukhariq has sounded the alarm over the regime's economic policies, warning that they have exacerbated living conditions for most Moroccans, widened inequality, and eroded the middle class. Speaking at a conference, he underscored the growing economic fragility across the country. Meanwhile, the Moroccan Economic and Social Council cautioned that unemployment is evolving into a long-term crisis, attributed it to government inaction.
The deterioration of living standards has affected 85.5% of citizens, increasing the number of Moroccans in the state of economic vulnerability from 2.6 million in 2019 to nearly 5 million today. This has widened inequality and accelerated the impoverishment of even the middle class.
In Morocco still, unemployed graduates have accused the Makhzen of capitulating the imperialist powers and global financial institutions. The Moroccan Association of Unemployed Graduates called on citizens to stand together against rising unemployment, deepening poverty, and the regime's crackdown on political dissent.
البطالة بأرقام رسمية ديال الدولة، فإنه نسبة البطالة 13.8 الجمعية الوطنية.
The worsening economic crisis that the Moroccan people are struggling with is nothing but a direct consequence of the ruling political system's submission to the orders of its imperialist masters and their global financial institutions.
Dozens of Sahrawis and Spanish activists took to the streets of Valencia, Spain on Saturday to protest Morocco's occupation of Western Sahara. Gathering outside the city hall, demonstrators waved Sahrawi flags and chanted slogans demanding self-determination and an end to the occupation. Similarly, the Mexican Senate reaffirmed its support for the Sahara Arab Republic, calling for respect for the Western Sahara's sovereignty and the right to self-determination during a legislative forum in Honduras. Meanwhile, Australia reiterated its stance in favor of Sahara independence, emphasizing that Western Sahara remains a non-self-governing territory awaiting decolonization, according to the Sahrawi news agency.
$200 million.
I would like to express clearly and explicitly my solidarity and support for the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic. I affirm here and before the representative of the Kingdom of Morocco that efforts must be made to ensure respect for the sovereignty and independence of the Sahrawi Arab Republic. Our country is convinced that the solution in Western Sahara is always based on respect for the sovereignty and independence of nations. Self-determination is essential to achieve a final solutions to the Sahrawi issue. Mexico has always been motivated by the principles of self-determination and respect for the sovereignty and independence of peoples. The sovereignty of the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic is a fundamental principle of Mexican foreign policy. Therefore, Mexico's historical position supports the inalienable right of the Sahrawi people to self-determination.
Para lograr una solución final a este diferendo.
Turning to other developments in Africa, the United Nations has sounded the alarm over the deepening humanitarian crisis in eastern DRC, where escalating violence has driven tens of thousands to seek refuge in neighboring countries. Sahara Virginia reports now.
Hundreds of thousands of Congolese are being forced to leave their homes, escaping the relentless violence in eastern DRC. They never wanted to go, but the crisis getting worse every day, they have no choice but to seek refuge in neighboring countries.
It's hard to believe, but the ferry between the two cities is finally running again. We made it to Goma.
Since early February, over 40,000 Congolese, mostly women and children, have arrived in Burundi, hoping to find safety according to the UN Refugee Agency. But getting help to them isn't easy. The violence keeps escalating and displaced people just keep coming. Even so, UNHCR and its partners are pushing forward, working around the clock to provide food, medical care and shelter.
The M23's offensive in North Kivu and South Kivu has increased the vulnerability of girls and women to conflict-related sexual violence. Mass displacement, the influx of combatants and prisoners, and the proliferation of weapons have considerably exacerbated the risk. At the same time, logistical and security constraints continue to hamper the United Nations' ability to verify reported cases.
It's tough in here. The situation is unstable, but at least medical teams are doing everything they can in the hospitals.
In the middle of all this chaos, there are small signs of hope. The DRC Ministry of Health has given the green light for the World Health Organization to send humanitarian aid to Goma through Kenya and Rwanda. And after weeks of shutdown due to the violence, boats are finally moving again on Lake Kivu between Bukavu and Goma. Just this past Tuesday, a ferry packed with much-needed supplies made it to Goma, bringing a bit of relief to those still holding on.
In Africa still, fierce clashes reignited on Saturday between the Sudanese army and the rapid support forces in central Khartoum and near the strategic Soba bridge. The army deployed drone and artillery strikes while heavy shelling pounded RSF positions in Khartoum and the eastern Nile. Meanwhile, Sudan's foreign minister expressed optimism that the war could end within 3 months, pointing to the recent army advances as a sign of potential stability. With the war in Ukraine still raging and diplomatic tensions running high, a new push for peace is taking center stage. Just days ahead of critical Russian-American meeting, Washington has submitted a UN resolution aimed at ending the conflict, one that's already sparking sharp reactions from Moscow, Kiev, and key Western leaders. Yasin Arukti has more.
With the high-stakes Russian-American meeting on the horizon, Washington is making its move. The US has submitted a UN resolution calling for an end to the war in Ukraine, an idea Moscow sees as sound. The draft calls for an urgent ceasefire, but notably sidesteps any mention of Ukraine's territorial integrity. It demands Russia's immediate withdrawal and a renewed push for diplomacy. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio is rallying UN support, calling it a simple, historic step toward peace.
The United States has proposed a simple historic resolution in the United Nations that we urge all member states to support in order to chart a path to peace. This resolution is consistent with President Trump's view that the UN must return to its founding purpose, as enshrined in the UN Charter, to maintain international peace and security, including through the peaceful settlement of disputes. If the United Nations is truly committed to its original purpose, we must acknowledge that while challenges may arise, the goal of lasting peace remains achievable.
Not everyone is convinced. Russian Ambassador Vasilij Nebenzia, while acknowledging the resolution as a sound idea, criticized it for ignoring the conflict's root causes.
The Resolute desk is being...
Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump took aim at Britain and France, accusing them of dragging their feet. He urged Putin and Zelensky to engage in serious negotiations.
I think that President Putin and President Zelensky are going to have to get together, because you know what? We want to stop killing millions of people. You have young soldiers being killed. If you saw the pictures that I saw of the battlefield from satellite, you've never seen any pictures like that.
Zelensky, for his part, insists Europe must have a seat at the table. After talks with British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, he doubled down, declaring that Ukraine's security is Europe's security. On Saturday, Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabakov confirmed expert-level talks with Washington within 2 weeks. Though the venue remains undecided, he stressed Moscow's readiness to overcome diplomatic hurdles as the clock ticks down to the Russian-American talks. One question looms large: will diplomacy finally turn the tide?
Moving on to the United States now. Kash Patel, Donald Trump's chosen candidate for FBI director, was officially sworn in on Friday following a narrow 51-49 Senate confirmation. Moderate Republicans Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski sided with all Democrats in opposing his appointment, citing concerns over his close ties to Trump and potential threats to the FBI's independence. Patel succeeds Christopher Wray, who stepped down at the end of the Biden administration.
I promise you the following. There will be accountability within the FBI and outside of the FBI, and we will do it through rigorous constitutional oversight starting this weekend.
Elsewhere in Africa, French energy giant Total has officially ended its nearly 70-year presence in Burkina Faso, completing its full withdrawal from the country. The company sold its assets and investments to Chorus Investment Group, led by Burkinabe businessman Idrissa Nassa, marking the conclusion of its market exit. More international news stories in the News in Brief with Sofiane Kanturi now.
German Chancellor Olaf Scholz said on Saturday that he is confident in his ability to remain in office after Sunday's general elections. He cast doubt on Mer's reliability and positioned his party as the strongest barrier against the far-right AfD gaining influence. Hundreds of anti-Euro protesters in Bulgaria threw Molotov cocktails at the EU office in Sofia on Saturday. According to the AFP, demonstrators attempted to storm the building. North Korea's defense ministry warned on Saturday that US and allied military provocations are escalating under the Trump administration. The ministry stated it is ready to counter strategic threats posed by the US and its adversaries with its own strategic capabilities. At least 3 people died and 74 were injured when a food court roof collapsed on Friday at the Real Plaza Mall in Trujillo, Peru's third largest city, 500 kilometers north Lima.
And that wraps up our news program for tonight. For more updates, you can always check our social media platforms. Thank you for tuning in. Good night.